All right. Here we are once again on the short fiction side hustle. This is number 12. And so this is a very special episode here. I have been at this for a full year now. And
Yeah,
I would
bravo.
like to thank my partner in crime, Vasha, for being here with me since the very beginning. Um,
Thank you. I get to one up Chris on this.
yes, you do. Yeah, yeah. And
For once.
Oh,
oh,
I beg to differ, sir.
No, that
Beg.
I was a sarcastic for once. Sorry.
yes, but Chris is a trooper. He came on.
Yeah,
He
that's
came on
good.
around number 5 or so,
True.
I think.
Yeah.
But yes, and so this is also a special edition because we are talking today about Stephen Erikson's tale "Blood Follows" from this collection of Bauchelain and Korbal Broach stories. This is volume 1 that I have. And of course, this tale was published on its own back in 2002, shortly after the publication, I believe, of Memories of Ice, the third novel in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. This tale takes place within the Malazan universe, the Malazan, what do you call that? The whatever it is, the
Gay
world,
world.
yeah, and and this is also special because we're returning to Stephen Erikson after, because we that was the first 3 episodes we did were on Erikson's novellas out of his
The devil delivered.
The Devil Delivered and Other Tales collection, and and we're also bringing up Blood Falls today because we are kind of doing a companion piece here from the Page Burners podcast, which also talked about this story very recently. And I don't know, you'll have to ask Vasha when that's going to be available. But
I mean, Steve will probably put it up next week. Me, we'll see.
Yeah.
I've been behind on the episodes.
very good. So yeah, so catch that as well
Mhm.
if you're watching this and you want to hear more opinions on Blood Follows and as well as my own and Vasha's. But today, this is my second reading of Blood Follows. This is a reread for me, and I believe it's both of yous first, right?
First for me,
That is
definitely. Yeah.
correct. Yes.
Okay, awesome, very good. And this is this was like I said, this was the first one written by Erikson. So this was his initial foray into short fiction in the Malazan world. And so, with all that said, this is the introduction of characters that we who have read the main series already seen in the novel Memories of Ice. But it's the introduction of these characters to Chris for the first time.
Yes.
And so that's going to be, I think, an interesting dynamic here to talk about the effect that the story had on him as someone who hasn't read Memories of Ice and those of us who have. And so overall, big thoughts on the story, Chris. What do you think about Blood Follows?
Okay, so I tried my best not to know anything going in. The only thing that I had seen that was Emancipor had been a Memories of Ice. I didn't actually know about anybody else within it. I think it's also worth pointing out that while I haven't read Memories of Ice, I have read the first book, which is Gardens of the Moon, and I can say very categorically, I see no spillover between Gardens of the Moon and this story, as far as I can tell from that, other than a very vague sense of shit being cool.
Cool shit, yeah.
Yeah, there's cool shit in it. Like there's loads of really like the world, just like Gardens of the Moon. There's loads of really interesting stuff happening in it, and it's sort of like real life adjacent in this one because it's like a more normal kind of murder mystery kind of there seems to be like a weird occult goings on in it, but nothing that would kind of necessarily lead it directly towards, being of a fantasy or other than that. But there is that sense as we make our way through the story, and especially when he gets to meet Bauchelain and subsequently Korbal Broach, you know that there's more going on than you necessarily see. In fact, I think it's well foreshadowed in some cases exactly what the nature of some of that is, but also that you don't really know the detail. But like I said, there's more going on. So I found it really, it was easy to follow, just like the blood, apparently. And because I think it was kind of set in that kind of that setup that you're familiar with, where murders happen, somebody coming to investigate. There's some politics going on in the background there, of which I had no context for. I don't even know whether you have context for. That'll be the interesting bit. So the people like Gold, etc., that are within the story. But it also, I think, very clearly sits within a bigger world, because I think you come away from this one story kind of going, oh, there's got to be more stories in this universe with these characters, etc., because there's a lot of, especially towards the edge, a lot of nod, wink, wink kind of stuff going on in terms of like, we'll see each other soon, we'll see each other again, but we can't come back here, that kind of stuff, which I thought was really interesting.
Excellent. And it's cool to know that that was conveyed to you as a first time reader of these characters, that there is more to these guys, there is more story to these guys, and there is like you said, the nod, wink, wink. There's gonna be more connection at some point to the greater world. And with that said, but did you get the sense also that the story could also just stand on its own?
Yeah. Because it is. I mean, it was say wrapped up insofar as we know sort of what happened, but without it really having a definitive end, and so to speak, of it being kind of, the person gets brought to justice and all of that normal stuff that would go with that type of story. But it's wrapped up enough to let you know, okay, this is what happened, these bodies and these people, so to speak.
Yeah, and it had that feel of stay tuned for next week.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so Vasha, as a complete series Malazan Book of the Fallen veteran, where was your overall take of this little short splice of life into Malazan life?
I think, yeah, it's interesting because in Memories of Ice, I didn't really latch on to these characters in like my first time or the second time. So it was interesting to read this book and realize it was the backstory I didn't really know I needed, especially with Emancipor Reese. I think this might not be a spoiler for Chris, so I think I'll say it. It at some point in Memories of Ice, one character asks Reese why he works for these two, and he says it's to get away from the wife, and we get a lot of elaboration on that in this book. So that's pretty cool. Getting Reese's backstory and how he ended up working for these two, and I guess the lack of the certain irreverent tone in which all of this is told. I'll repeat myself a little bit from what I said on Tuesday when we were recording this for Page Burners. It's I think it's interesting how the narrative makes you want to root for things that aren't, like, if you examine it, it's like, okay, well, I need to check if I'm a little disturbed, right? For instance, I wanted Korbal Broach to not be caught so Reese can keep his job and, like, get away. So there's a certain I guess the way the story is told makes you think about and like root for things that seem a little, on closer examination, not great, which is always fun to think about. I think Erikson does that kind of thing particularly well, except here it's like, two serious examinations of life. Here it's a little bit in the spirit of comedy, I think. So I liked that switch.
Yeah, I think this was really the because there's not much comedy at all in House Gates, and there's some in Memories of Ice and Gardens of the Moon, especially between some of the soldiers and stuff like that. But this story being published after Memories actually showed more comedy than we had previously seen with Erikson. And I think it kind of opened up the floodgates a little bit, if you ask me, because
Okay.
we do see more comedy in the main series later on. And it's of course, it's a very dark humor. It's very, like you said, Vasher, it's something that you laugh at and then think about and go, oh, wait, that's kind of creepy, these guys. Do I really want to root for this? Because what are these guys? These guys,
Yeah.
They're necromancers. Are we really rooting for these guys to come out on top? And you have the juxtaposition of not everybody in the town is an angel by any means, and some of the people that these guys are dealing with, they're not the nicest people either. So he leaves that wide open to root for people you wouldn't normally root for, and he does it because he's using comedy to leverage your deeper disgust at what these guys actually are.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting overall. I think in fact, if you think about it, the whole setting, like you said, Jared, is like super dark, right?
Mhm.
And the name of the city is the Lamentable City of Mole, and it's short into Lamentable Mole. And apparently it's filled with shades and barrows and all kinds of dead things. So it has this very grubby feel to it overall, but the layer of I don't want to say comedy because it's not like laugh out loud. If you compare it to say a Woodhouse or Pratchett book, it's not joke every paragraph or whatever. It's just I think the tone of the narrative voice that makes it feel less dark or funny, at least in this book. So yeah, it's interesting how like the slightly irreverent lens can switch how we think about the setting and the characters too.
Yeah, I mean, this is a question I would have sort of around that. There is the sense that this is a grubby crime place. Well, Boris clicked the wrong button, probably.
She said enough.
Yeah, it's not enough. It doesn't want to answer my question. So yes, it is sort of set up as like a place where crime happens. So like it's not that there are murders being a problem. It's like it's the nature of the murders. It's that kind of stuff, which sort of lends itself to maybe this like darkly comic humor, so to speak. Whereas certainly Gardens of the Moon, it's a bit po-faced in places, if that makes sense. It's very serious stuff. That's going on. It's like there are big wars, big fights happening all over the place. It's a very serious situation that place finds itself in, and so there isn't really the opportunity or the relevance for fantasy or for humor. There's a tiny bit of it in terms of the relationship between our thief and the courtesan, so to speak, or the young princess. A little bit of humor in there, but that's pretty much all there is in Gardens of the Moon. And you said this is sort of a departure, a bit of a springboard from the rest of it. Does the feeling of the world in the subsequent books then match the kind of the less seriousness part of, I would say, that this world, to match that humor?
No, it's quite serious. I mean, I think the humor in later books that he starts exploring here is used to give the reader a break, to be honest with you, from some of the really bad events that happen. and Erikson does it so well that you're not like, oh, I'm going to turn a page. Oh, now it's time for humor, and then turn a page.
Right.
Now it's time for something horrible to happen, or something like that. It's blended seamlessly, and
Okay.
but I think he started to explore what he could do with humor with these stories, and he really weaved it into the main narrative, um, very well, very well.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I think I'll add to that that a lot of the humor in the main series is through dialogue. I think most of it. This one relies, I think, to a certain extent on the absurdity of the situation.
Yeah,
But most of the humor, from what I remember in the Book of the Fallen, is through dialogue and character interactions. So it, or like monologues at most. I don't think it's something. There are some absurd characters, don't get me wrong. I think Krupp comes to mind a little bit, and Iskar Alpast is someone you'll meet in the second book. So there are absurd situations
Hmm.
that are also funny. Yeah, I think it's a combination of the two. But I think the
Okay.
one I like best with what Erikson does is the dialogue based humor. Um, but yeah, but that's it. I'm also extremely fond of Bust and Krupp. So
yeah. No, you're. I see what you're saying, because this situation is absurd, because you start off right away with the absurdity of Emancipor Reese's life, basically his lot in life, really, where he's thrown into this place where his employers keep dying on him, and he needs to find money, and he's got this, supposedly he has a wife screaming at him from the other room, to go get some money, or go take care of the go to the alchemist and get this, because the kids have mange, and um so it he has and he's of course at a bar getting drunk, because he doesn't want to deal with this stuff, and
Who could blame him?
right. So like you said, Vasha, the situation is absurd as we start, and so the little bits of dialogue we get in here from both him in a whining kind of manner, and from Bauchelain, who has this high-handed speech type pattern, which is totally contrasted by the situation, which makes it funny when he says stuff, even though he's just talking, and so that contrast creates the humor that is brought out through the absurdity of situation. Yeah.
and I think it's also funny, for instance, that he ended up employed by the person who killed, not quite the person, but one of the people uh, participating in the killing of his previous employer. And yeah, there's just, I think, a lot of layers to the situation that you think of as like, that's funny, but it's not laugh out loud funny
Right.
yet. Like, are the rest of the Bauchelain and Korbal Broach more laugh out loud funny?
Yeah. They get there. There's you'll see in the future that, especially the last one, the most
Okay.
recent one that was published, was actually laugh out loud funny for me.
Mm.
But I don't know, maybe my sense of humor has been twisted by reading these tales in the first place. Who knows?
But I will actually say, given, and this often happens with dark humor in a lot of ways, the more that you get to know the characters and sort of their nuances and who they are, the more that you understand what's actually happening in the room and why that's funny. Then, so that doesn't surprise me either.
Yeah, true. Very true.
Yeah, yeah. I had a question for Chris about the whole
Will I disconnect? Will I disconnect now that the first is asking a question? That's good.
So if my browser's been crashing with StreamYard, if that happens again, we know Chris is responsible. But but anyway, so two-part question. One, I know you've been like devouring a lot of crime fiction recently.
Mhm.
How does this rate in that? Like, how much did it feel more like fantasy with crime setting or crime fiction in fantasy setting? No, like how much did you appreciate the crime part of it? And I think secondly, there was some the final reveal I think is fairly obvious to everyone who's already familiar with the characters from Memories of Ice, especially the bit about the bit with the dog, where I think it's a dog, right, where they realize that the dog is detecting a man but with like a female scent or something like that. Like basically they can't figure out whether who they are looking for is male or female, but we know from book 3 that Korbal Broach is a eunuch. So I was curious how well that twist worked on you. And I think we were talking about this on Tuesday too. It works on it theoretically. I think it works on both levels. For those who've read the book, it's a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I know you know. And for those who haven't, which I don't have experience of, so I'm curious what you thought. I think it's a nice twist / reveal. So what did you think of those two aspects?
Okay, so I'll deal with the crime novel aspect first. I think it's much more fantasy with a crime element because it definitely feels much more akin to if I was even to think about almost a little Lovecraftian, and if anything, but I think that develops towards the end of the book. There's something more cosmical going on here, or fantastical going on. At the start, with the nature of the murders and the cut up, the thing it most resembled for me was like From Hell, in terms of the grisly nature of the murders, etc., and then the investigation of that. So I was sort of picturing a lot of the artwork from Hell, from Alan Moore's From Hell.
Alan Moore's From Hell,
yeah, absolutely. Around that part. So that's the thing that most resembled it. Now, the thing that I think gives it real structure is the investigation element. That we talked about this when we were talking about Donaldson's The Man Who Killed His Brother. The kind of procedural nature of, right, you go from place A to place B, follow your nose, follow the nose. So you kind of get to the point and it navigates through. And by the time you get to Bauchelain and Broach's room, then okay, you can even see from the page count towards the end that we're getting to a point in that case. And the thing that was very different, I think, about this book compared to most other crime books is that I think there was a real chance that Gold is killed as part of the conclusion, whereas in most other crime books that's unlikely to happen. The person that's investigating is under real threat, whereas I think the rules of engagement aren't quite so obvious here, if that makes sense. So those are the two things that I would kind of say towards that. And as I said, towards the end, it's not that the crime's really solved in the way that a crime book is either. It sort of leans into the cosmic, sort of more occult and fantastical elements as it goes on. In terms of the reveal of the eunuch, I think it's fairly well communicated, not just with the dog, but the idea that I didn't see anybody leave the room. There's two guys went in, there's nobody came out, from it, so they must be there somewhere. And all that you're left thinking is, in what form are they hiding? At that stage, you don't really know how it could be hiding and where it could be hiding, but you have a sense that, okay, there's Korbal's still in the room there somewhere, but our good friend Gold isn't aware of what it is. But again, we don't, because you're reading this short story with the context, you also don't know, like I said, the rules of engagement. You don't really know what the possibilities are. And I think that's where the context of Memories of Ice or something gives you that, because you're coming from that world where you know what the fantastical elements are, what are the possibilities, the shape-shifting warrants, whatever bit that you want to think about. You don't really know that necessarily at the outset of this book, because it does present itself as like a murder mystery of some sorts.
Yeah, that's good points, because you really have to take into context that that you have. I mean, the blurb on the back says eccentric necromancers, and so you have to take into context that the book is about these guys.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're gonna get caught, or if they do, they're going to get away, or something magical is going to happen in order to put little tweaks and twists into any kind of crime narrative that's set up. Yeah.
And sort of to that point, as you said earlier on, although they're the named characters of the book, it's the first collected tales of. With them being necromancers, it's not like you instantly are rooting for them either. It's almost like they're anti-heroes, and it's straight off the bat. And you sort of know that, so you're like, do they get caught? It'd be sort of interesting if they get caught, because we'd be able to see again the breadth of their powers and stuff about how they circumnavigate that situation. But yeah.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing we brought up earlier, I think, Vajra, is that it's that these guys, they're not good guys. You're not supposed to really be rooting for them, but I think I've really fell in love with Emancipor Reese as a character when I started reading these stories, as opposed to when he appeared in Memories of Ice. You feel sympathy for him there, but here is where you say, "Oh, this is actually a really great character," to get involved with, and he's the guy you're latching on to, and of course, he's taking the job. He's taking this job with these guys, not knowing what he's really getting into. By the end of the story, he's cursing his fate, and he's what was the thing he said at the end that was telling about his new situation here? And it was oh yeah, when Bauchelain asked him, did he anticipate the journey to last very long? And in his head, he's like, forever, you bastard. And he tells him months, but it's so you get that sense by the end of it that that's the until next episode moment, and that's the and it's also the moment where you're like, this poor sap, what's he in for? What's he in for now? And what are these two enigmatic, almost otherworldly beings going to be putting him through? And it really, really ramps the sympathy up for Emancipor Reese at the end of the story. Whereas at the beginning of the story, who's this loser?
Yeah.
Why would I care about him? His life is in the dumps. Who cares about this guy? But by the end of the story, you're like, oh, this guy, he's I'm all there for you, man.
Yeah.
I want to buy you a beer.
He's a bit of a dope, he doesn't really, he doesn't want much, he doesn't need much. But I think the key stage for me, because I do agree with you, coming away at the end of this book, Emancipor Reese is the one that goes, that's the character that I really want to follow. But it's the bit where they get to the door, in the place where Bauchelain and Broach are staying, and he's like, I can't let you in. I like this job. It's not worth my. And the guy's like, we're going in. And it sort of ends in that weird thing, right? Well, let's pretend that I wouldn't let you in, and have no choice. And can you tell them when you get in, because I like this job again? And yet his job is to work for two necromancers. It's like this kind of situation that's better than the situation at home in some ways. They're better than the one he left. It's two necromancers, and yeah, okay, I'll do that instead.
Yeah, and there comes the absurdity, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, funny stuff.
I think apart from Reese, there were two POV characters, right? Mainly the not Sergeant. Was he Sergeant? I don't remember his title. Gould. Yeah. The investigator. Yeah, there were some funny moments with him, and I really enjoyed his perspective too. I didn't want to switch away from Reese that much, but after a certain point, it was okay. I'm enjoying reading this guy's perspective too.
Yeah, it was interesting that there is the mention of a king of this place, wherever that king may be, but there's also you also get some interesting dynamics in the politics about how this guy Gould he doesn't care what the king thinks. He's going to do his investigation. He's going to perform his duties, and so despite the dark nature of this town where it feels like people may get murdered all the time or it like feels like a dangerous place, there is still this underlying current that somebody here possesses enough nobility and um righteousness to like make things to want to make things right so that people can live here peacefully. And I think that's an important addition to the story so that everything's not doom and gloom and so that everything's not just so absurd that there's no way that people would just live here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Plus, you get the idea, like you sort of talked about Reese. He's got two necromancers, but he's the hope. The hope isn't that the world is going to be good. The hope that he will survive and sort of have a good outcome. You know what I mean? And so you're sort of got that thing to root for that's positive.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But in the beginning of the story, there's a lot of bells going off. That's never a good indication in a story.
Unless you get married, but in some cases that's also, not what you want.
Yeah, depends on what kind of story you're telling. But
Exactly. Yeah.
the the bells and so there's a lot of noise, a lot of bells going off, and the one of the things he says is he wants to escape, and of course that sets up his character's journey, this wanting to escape from this place, and the whole theme of the story, be careful what you wish for, basically is what you get out of this story, because Reese got what he wanted and he absolutely did not ultimately want that.
But also, on the other hand, like you guys pointed out, he did protect his job fiercely by not letting the police officer in. So
Yeah, well,
he wants it, but he doesn't want it.
yeah, he protected himself because he didn't want the police officer to harm him as well, but he didn't want the necromancers being mad at him for letting this guy by. So he came up with a clever solution there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So I like when Gold, speaking of the bells, when Gold says to the that's the other character I like, the over enthusiastic corporal, is he, the hyper armored listening to every order, taking it at face value guy, sends him to find the monk at the end of that rope and wring his neck.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and so that's funny because Reese isn't the only one who wants to escape these bells. It seems these bells seem to be a curse on this very place, even though the use of bells was for like timekeeping and what have you, and they're supposed to have a practical purpose, but they just seem to be a detriment to life in Mole here, which already has this gloom over this pall over it from its very position where it's like you said earlier, Vasha, the shades and what have you.
Yeah. And we had some interesting rat soul taken too, and some was it did we meet Grillin in this one?
Oh,
or did we hear of them? But yeah, there were these two two people, the rat killers of the city who
Yes.
were more than what they seemed. So that is you can see, I think, a lot of the typical elements from the series, the Book of the Fallen series, where like things are not quite, and I think that's sort of a side effect of being set in a world like this, that things are always more than they seem. Not always, sometimes more than what they seem. Like these rat killers who are, what were they doing? Like they were roasting and eating rats, right? And
Yeah.
they had some control on the rat population. Somehow they turned out to be actually protecting the city against this rat soul taken or something. That was pretty cool. I liked that little touch.
Yeah, that's definitely a nod to Malazan in general, that you had these guys who were that was their job to control this creature.
Yeah, yeah. We'll meet more rat population controllers in the later in the series.
Ooh, promises, promises.
Promises, promises. Sure, you're excited about that, right, Chris? The thing you're most looking forward to in book 7.
Mm.
Yeah. So there were a lot of nods also in this story to the gods. There was a lot of mentioning of Hood, who
Mm,
Chris you met in Gardens of the Moon.
Oh yeah, yep.
Hood, the god of death. There's quite a few mentions of him, and but there was also a mention of who was it? Drek.
mhm.
Uh, there's a lot of offerings to Drek, and I'm not sure if he's mentioned in Gardens of the Moon or not, um, but these are just some of the gods that we're gonna run across in the main series, and it was interesting how these were like the nuggets that Erikson was throwing in for his regular readers of the main series, and um, but from your perspective, Chris, did they add to the story or get in the way? You think?
Sort of irrelevant for me at this stage, because much like in the main series, while they're there and they're showing their hand a little bit, they're not really important to the story at them. That certainly weren't in Gardens of the Moon to the point that they've overtaken the story. If you know what I mean, your protagonists that you're sort of following in Gardens of the Moon are the non-gods,
Mhm.
and when the gods interfere, you're sort of wondering why, rather than sort of having a picture of why, etc. So same for this book. I think, like we sort of talked about, there is this sort of promise or the idea that there's a lot more going on in this world, even though it's a
Yeah.
very self-contained story of its own right, and that you just sort of. I think it gives it flavor. I think it definitely does. I think that's an interesting part about short fiction within a series, rather than short fiction for short fiction's sake, and where you can do some things that are very different. Because we read a lot of short fiction, as you know, but it's very self-contained stuff, and you can tell the stories that are part of a bigger work, as opposed to the things that are just standalone or otherwise.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, the gods didn't really interfere in the story, because I mean the narrative drive's always about finding the hell what's going on,
Yeah.
and what's going on there.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because of course, the gods play a major role in the main
Oh yeah.
series, and but I think Erikson was poking fun of that a little bit, because Bauchelain asks Reese if he follows a god, and Reese says, "My wife swears by him. I mean, she prays to a few." And he's like, "And you?" And he goes, "Well, the devout die too, don't they?" Uh, and he says, "If you clove to an ascendant, it just doubles the funeral costs." So I thought that was hilarious. And
Oh dear.
and so that's to me that's Erikson making fun of the uber importance of gods in the main series, where this character that we're starting to like and we're starting to get familiar with is like, yeah, I don't truck with that stuff because it just doubles the funeral cost. I think that's hilarious.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
All right.
Excellent.
Yeah, and also we do see that there is somebody towards the as the story goes on that does have some power of the gods backing him, and we see that Bauchelain does not want to mess with him. It's one of the things
Mhm.
that kind of says, "All right, go get the boat. We're gonna get out of here." And he temporarily, hobbles him by dealing with the guy's horse, um, but he could tell that this guy had quite a bit of power right at the moment, and
Yeah.
so they make their presence known in various ways. The gods do.
The mortal
Absolutely.
sword of Drek, right?
Yes,
It
the
was
most.
also quite a hilarious character for me. I think the pompousness of it all,
Mhm.
and his oath of like, I will find the murderer or whatever, like, or I'll kill the guy, whatever his oath was. I thought I thought that was interesting. He made him funny, intentionally funny, and yeah, that whole character worked.
Yes, very well. I like it. So overall, to me, a very enjoyable read.
Yeah.
It flew by, even on a especially on a reread. I um I read this, I think, in one sitting almost, and the I don't know what edition you have, um, Chris. Is
No,
is
so it's got the three tales inside it. I have to say, this little small book is one of the nicest things I can hold. It's so small. If I put it up against a normal regular size paperback that we're doing for Destination Copies, you can kind of see the height of it, etc. So it's
Yeah,
very cute. Yeah.
because I got the larger paperback, but
Ah.
the print is so big in
Yeah.
here that, like, I was just flying through the pages. They were turning fast because the print's very big, and I didn't know if you had the same size print there, but
No, it's just a normal size, but it reads very quickly just because of the nature, I think, of
yeah,
of that. It's good.
yeah. Which is very interesting because, and I think it attributes to the lighter nature of the story compared to the main series, where you can get um, you can get involved in some very heavy literature in the main
Yeah,
series.
and very long chapters, etc. The things that go on
Yes,
and then
yeah.
expounded upon. Yeah, yeah,
Whereas this is a very definite contrast to that.
yeah.
So it was fun stuff.
Yeah. I think I have an edition that's between the sizes of both of yours. I think I have
Mhm.
one that's the UK paperback size, I think. But
Okay.
yeah, that's interesting.
Cool. All right. And any other wild theories or observations?
Nothing
They'll be
from me.
back.
They'll, they'll be back indeed.
Yes.
Yes. So as far as my series here, short fiction side hustle, we will revisit these guys whenever the page burning crew gets to the next story, um, in their trek across the
Mhm.
Mel's universe, which could be a while. We'll see.
Yeah, we're
you
reading in
guys,
publication order, so
you
it'll
guys
be
are reading.
after House of.
Yeah,
I
you're
think
reading
it's
House
after
of Change.
Midnight Tides. Yeah,
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you're reading House of Change next, and so
yeah.
it's going to be a couple
So
months.
about 7 to 8 months, I think.
Yeah. Um,
That's good.
so for our next episode, we will be going back to Mr. Donaldson with Daughter of Regals and other
Yes.
tales. And so I'm kind of excited about that because it's been literally 30 years since I read this, and I really don't remember a damn thing.
That's exciting.
So it's exciting, and And that'll kick off the my second year of doing these short fiction side hustles. So that's cool. And I'm hoping to have a couple of
Nice.
guests on the show for next time. We'll hoping to schedule that and rope those guys in. All right.
Yeah.
With all that said, any final thoughts from you guys? You got it all?
No, very much enjoyed it. It was nice to do something else within the Malazan universe that didn't require 6 months to read.
Awesome. All right. With all that said, you can find Chris at the Chronicle of Chris YouTube channel. You can find Vasha at Reading by the Rainy Mountain. You can find all of us on the Speculation podcast. And as I always say, thank you and be good to each other. Bye-bye now.